Chapter 7. Consanto. Standing beside the car in the full heat of the mid-morning sun, Alex had told me that Jerry Harris was right. Consanto had certainly done everything it possibly could to protect wherever it was hiding. There was a single main building, rectangular in shape and at least 50 meters long. Alex had seen the picture in the brochure and he was struck by how much the actual building resembled it, as if the photograph had been blown up 1,000 times, cut out, and somehow made to stand up. It wasn't quite real. Alex was looking at a wall of reflective glass. Even sunlight couldn't seem to find a way in. It was a huge little block with a single sign, Consanto, cut out of solid steel. Jerry was standing next to him, dressed in knee-length shorts and a sleeveless t-shirt. He had brought along a pair of binoculars, and Alex examined the wide concrete steps that led up to the main entrance. There were a few outlying buildings, warehouses and ventilation plants, and a car park with about 100 cars. He trained the binoculars on the roof of the main complex. He could see the 2 water tanks, a row of solar panels, and next to them, a brick tower with a single open door, a fire escape. If he could reach, he might just find a way in. But it was obvious that he could get nowhere near. The entire site was surrounded by a fence, more than 6 meters high, and topped with razor wire, a single track that led to a checkpoint, with a second one right behind it. Every car went in and one out was searched, and just to be sure, a camera was mounted on steel poles, swiveled and rotated, the lenses sweeping over every centimetre of ground. Even a fly trying to get in would have been noticed and swatted. Alex saw gloomily. Consanto Enterprises had chosen the position carefully. Amalfi, the busy, densely populated Mediterranean port, was a few miles to the south, and there were a few isolated villages to the north. The complex was in a sort of hole, with a flat and rocky stretch of landscape, and with few trees or buildings. Nowhere to hide. Alex was standing with the sea about half a mile behind him. There were sailing boats dotted about a single ferry ploughed through the water on its way to the island of Capri. His overwhelming expression was that it would be impossible to approach Consanto from any direction without being spotted. He was probably being filmed even now. "You see what I mean?" Jerry said. Tom had his back to the buildings. He was looking at the sea. "Anyone fancy a swim?" he asked. "Yeah," Jerry nodded slowly. "You bring any trunks?" "No." "Doesn't matter, we can swim without boxers." "I'm not wearing boxers." Jerry glanced at his brother. "You are so gross." Alex watched as a supply van made its way past the first control post. It really did look impossible. Even if he managed to sneak into a car or a truck, he would be found when it was searched. There was no point waiting until nightfall. There were dozens of arc lamps arranged around the perimeter, and they would flicker on in the minute it grew dark. He could see uniformed guards patrolling the grounds with German shepherd dogs on leashes. They would probably be there all night too. It was bad to give up. He couldn't get in from the front or the sides. He couldn't climb the fence. He looked past the complex. It had been except against a sheer lift. The rock face rose at least 300 meters, and he noticed a cluster of buildings far away at the summit. He pointed. What's that?" he asked. Jerry followed the direction of Alex's finger. "I don't know." He thought for a moment. "It's probably Ravello. It's a hilltop village. Can we go there?" "Yeah, sure." Alex put it all together in an instant. The flat roof with the fire escape was seemingly open. The village perched high up on the cliff. The equipment he had seen in Jerry's flat in Naples suddenly. It was very simple. Consanto Enterprise might look impregnable, but Alex had found a way in. The faded 19th century villa stood some distance away from Ravello, reached by a path that twisted along the side of the mountain, high above the pine trees. It was a wonderful place to escape to, lost in its own world, far away from the crowds on the beaches and in the vast streets below. A cool evening breeze drifted in from the sea, and the light had turned from a blue to a deep red as the sun slowly set. There was an ornamental garden with a long avenue running down from down the centre and at the far end. A terrace that appeared unexpectedly with white marble heads mounted on the parapet. Beyond the terrace there was nothing. The garden simply came to an abrupt end with a sheer drop straight down to the coastal road. The Consanto complex and the rocky flatlands 300 odd metres below. The tourists had long ago left for the evening. The villa was about to close. Alex stood on his own thinking about what he had to do. His mouth was dry and there was an unpleasant churning in his stomach. This was madness. There had to be another solution. No, he had to examine all the possibilities. This was the only way. He knew that base jumping was one of the most dangerous of all extreme sports, and that every base jumper would know someone who had been injured or killed. BASE stands for Building, Antenna, Span and Earth. It means essentially parachuting without the use of an aircraft. Base jumpers will throw themselves off skyscrapers, dams, rock faces and bridges. The jumps themselves aren't against the law, but they're usually done without permission. Often in the middle of the night, trespassing, being outside the system is all part of the fun. They're driven all the way back to the Naples to get the equipment with Jerry Harris. Jerry Harris had agreed to Alex. Jerry had used the long journey to give Alex as much information about the techniques and the potential dangers as he could. A crash course, Tom had muttered gloomily, just what Alex didn't need. The first and most important rule is the one that beginners find hardest, Jerry said. When you jump, you've got to wait as long as possible before you release the canopy. The longer you wait, the further you travel away from the side of the cliff. And you must keep your shoulders level. The last thing you need is a 180 onto a hardcore object. What's that in English? Alex asked. It's what occurs when you get an off-heading opening. Basically, it means when you go the wrong way and hit the cliff. And what happens then? You die. You die. Alex was wearing a helmet, knee pads, and elbow pads. Jerry had also lent him a pair of sturdy hiking boots, but that was all. You need to react instantly as he fell through the sky, and too much protective gear would only slow him down. Besides, as Jerry had pointed out, nobody had ever made a base jump without basic training. If something went wrong, all the protective clothes in the world wouldn't do him one bit of good. The difference between life and death. For Alex, it boiled down to 220 square feet of 5 F111 nylon. Skydivers need on average one square foot of parachute for every pound of their body weight and equipment, but base jumpers need almost half of that again. Alex's chute had been designed for Jerry. He was heavier than he was. He would have plenty of material. He was carrying a seven sail blackjack canopy which Jerry had bought a second hand for little under $1,000 American. An ordinary parachute normally costs 9 cells, 9 separate pockets. The larger base canopy is thought to be more docile, is easier to fly and land accurately. Alex's own weight will drag it out of the development bag as he fell, and it would inflate over his head, taking the shape of an aerofoil, the Rama design of all modern parachutes. Jerry stood next to him, pointing a black gadget about the size and shape of a pair of binoculars at the ground. He was taking a reading. 357 meters, he said. He took out a laminated card and an altitude delayed planner and quickly consulted it. You can do a 4, he said. It'll give you approximately 15 seconds under canopy, a 6 Mach, and that'll mean landing almost at once. Alex understood what he was saying. He could free fall for between 4 and 6 seconds. The less time he spent dangling underneath the parachute, the less chance he would have been spotted from below. On the other hand, the faster he arrived, the more chance he would have of breaking most of his bones. When you get down there, remember, flaring. Yes, if you don't want to break both your legs, you have to slow yourself down about 3 or 4 seconds before impact. Not 3 or 4 seconds. Not 3 or 4 seconds after impact. Tom added helpfully. That'll be too late. Thanks. Alex looked around. There was nobody in sight. He half wished a policeman or somebody from the villa would come along and put a stop to this before he actually jumped, but the gardens were empty, the white marble heads staring past him, not remotely interested. You go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in about 3 seconds, Jay went on. I put on a mesh slider, but you're still going to feel the opening shock. But at least I'll warn you, you're about to land. That's when you get both feet and knees together. Put your chin on your chest and knees together. Try not to bite your tongue in half. I almost did on my first time. Yes. Single words were out all I could manage. Joe looked over the precipice. The roof of Concerto is right beneath us and there is no wind. You won't have much time to steer, but you can try putting on the toggles. He rested a hand on Alex's shoulder. I could do this for you if you like, he said. No, Alex said. Thanks, Jay, but it's down to me. It's my idea. Good luck. Break a leg, Tom exclaimed. Or rather, don't. Alex moved to the edge between 2 of the statues and looked down. He was right over the complex. Although from his height, it looked tiny, like a silver Lego brick. Most of the workers would have left by now, but there would still be guards. He would just hope that nobody looked up in a few seconds. It would take them to arrive, but that was what he had observed earlier. Outside the gate, Constantine faced the sea. The main road and the entrance were on the same side. That was where all the attention was focused, and if Alex was lucky, he would be able to drop in, quite literally unnoticed. His stomach heaved. There was no feeling in his legs, as if he were floating. He tried to take a deep breath, but the air didn't seem to want to rise above his chest. Did it really matter so much penetrating Constantine, finding out how it might be involved with SCORPIA? What would Tom and his brother say if he changed his mind? Even at the last minute, to hell with this, he thought lots of teenagers did base jumps. Jerry himself had recently jumped off the new River Gorge Bridge in West Virginia. It had been Bridge Day, the one day in the year that when the jump was legal in America, and he had said there'd been dozens of kids waiting in line. It was a sport. People did it for fun. If he hesitated for 1 more second, he would never do it. It was time to get it over with. In a single movement, he climbed over the parapet, checked the line from the pilot chute, took one last look at the target and jumped. It was like a committing circuit. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Everything was a blur. There was the sky, the edge of the cliff, and unless he imagined it, Tom's staring face. Then it all tilted. The blue rushed into the grey, with the white of the roof punching up, the wind hammering into his face. The eyes were being sucked into the backs of their sockets. With sudden acceleration, head was pouring. No, Jay would warned about this. How many seconds? Now! He threw out the pilot chute, hoping he'd find the clear airflow that was meant to surround him. How it worked? The chute had already disappeared, dragging with it the bright line, which would in turn suck the black jack canopy out of its pack. God, he'd left it too late. He was falling too fast. A long silent scream with the wind in his ears, skin calling. Where was the bloody chute? Where was up? Where was down? Falling. There was a sudden wrenching, breaking sensation. He thought he was being torn in half. He could see something. Ropes and billowing material just at the edge of his vision. The canopy, but that didn't matter. Where was he going? He looked down and saw his own feet dangling in space. A white rectangle was waking up to meet him. The roof of the complex, but it was too far away. He was going to miss quick. Pull the toggles, that's better. The roof tilted back towards him. What had he forgotten? Flaring. He pulled down on brakes, dropping the tail of the canopy so that, like a plane landing, he came in an upward angle, but he had left it too late. All he could see was the surface of the roof. Then he hit it. He felt the shock travel through his ankles, easing up into his thighs. He ran forward. The canopy was dragging him. Joe had warned him about this. There might be a stronger breeze low down. If he wasn't careful, he would be pulled off the roof. He could see the edge racing towards him. He dug in his heels, reaching for behind the risers. He caught hold of them and pulled them in. Stop running with just a centimetre to spare. He managed to get a grip with the balls of his feet. He leaned back, tugging toward the canopy towards him. He sat down hard. He had arrived. For a few seconds he did nothing. He was experiencing a massive high that all the base jumpers know, and which makes the sport so addictive. His body was releasing a flood of adrenaline, and it was coursing through his entire system. His heart was pumping at double speed. He could feel every hair on his skin standing up. He looked back up at a cliff. There was no sign of Tom or his brother. If they had been standing there, they would have been too small to see. He just couldn't believe how far he'd travelled, or how quickly he'd arrived. Far he could tell the guards had kept their heads down to their eyes on the ground, not their air. So much for Consanto's security. Max wondered until his heart and pulse rate had returned to normal. Then he pulled off the helmet and protective pads. He quickly folded the chute and packed it as best as he could inside the bag. He could taste blood in his mouth and realised that, despite Jerry's warnings, he still managed to bite his tongue. Keeping low, he carried the bag with the canopy over to the door that he had seen earlier from the ground. He was going to have to leave Jerry's equipment up here on the roof until it was time to leave. It was time to leave. He had more or less worked out how he was going to get out of Consanto. The easiest way would simply be to call the police and get himself arrested. At the very worst, he would be prosecuted for trespassing. But he was only 14. He doubted that he would find himself in Italian jail. More likely they would pack him off back to England. The door was ajar, but he had been right about that. A dozen cigarette butts on the roof told about their own story. Despite all the security guards, the cameras, and the high-tech alarms, and a single smoker in need of a fag found his way up here and blowing the whole place wide open. Well, I was fine. I slipped in through the door and found a flight of metal steps leading down. There was a set of more solid-looking doors, steel with small glass windows, and for a moment I thought his way was blocked, but it must have been some sort of sensor. They stood open as he approached, then closed again. After him, perhaps the anonymous smoker had set it up that way. When he turned and waved a hand, the doors didn't move. The numerical keypad on the wall told him bad news. Getting in this way was one thing, but to get out again, he would need a code. He was trapped. There was only one way to go, and that was forward. He followed the blank white corridor down to another set of doors, which hissed open and shut. As he passed through, he entered the core of the complex. There was an immediate difference to the air quality. It was extremely cold, and it smelt metallic. He glanced up and noticed a brightly polished silver duct running the full length of the passage. There were dials and monitors everywhere. Already his head was beginning to ache. This place was just too clean. He kept moving, wanting to see as much as possible before he was discovered. There didn't seem to be anyone around. All the workers must have gone home for the night. But it could only be a matter of time before security looked in. He had a door open somewhere, and his heart flipped, and he searched for somewhere to hide. The corridor was bare, brightly lit by powerful neon lights behind glass panels. That wasn't so nice. As a shadow to give him cover, he saw a doorway and hurried over to it. But the door was locked. Alex pressed himself against the door, hoping against that hope that he wouldn't be seen. A man appeared around the corner. At first it was hard to be sure that it was a man. The figure wrapped in a pale blue protective suit that covered every centimetre of his body. He had a hood over his head and a glass mask in front of his face, obscuring most of his features. But then he turned sideways and I saw a glimpse of the glasses and a beard. The man was pushing what looked like a huge tea urn, shining chrome mounted on wheels. The urn was as tall as he was, with a series of valves and pipes lit on the lid. Twice relief, the man turned off down the second corridor. Alex looked at the door, which had provided him with minimal cover, and a thick glass window like the front of the washing machine. There was a large room on the other side, still lit but empty. I suppose it must be a laboratory, but it looked more like a distillery, with some more of them suspended on chains. There was a metal staircase leading up to some sort of gantry, and a whole wall lined with what looked like enormous fridge doors. All the metal looked brand new, brilliantly polished. Alex watched the woman cross the room. The complete complex obviously wasn't as deserted as he had thought. She was also dressed in protective clothes, with a mask over her face, and she was pushing a silver trolley. His breath frosted on the glass as he tried to peer in. It didn't make any sense, but the woman seemed to be carrying eggs, hundreds of them, neatly lined up on trains. There were signs of ordinary chicken eggs, every of them pure white. Could the woman be part of the catering team? I started it. There was something almost sinister about the eggs. Perhaps it was their uniformity. The fact that they were all so obviously identical. More went behind. So the machine disappeared, increasingly puzzled. I decided it was time to move on. He went down the second corridor, following the direction of the man with the urn. Now he could hear machinery, a soft rhythm clattering. He came to a glass panel set in the wall and looked through it into a darkened room. On a second woman sat in front of a bizarre, complicated machine that seemed to be sorting hundreds of test tubes, rotating them, counting them, labeling them, and finally delivering them into her hands. What was being made at Constanto Enterprises? Chemical weapons, perhaps? And how the hell was he going to get out? Alex glanced down and noticed his hands still grubby from his base jump. He was dirty and sweaty, and he was surprised he had set off a single alarm in the building. Surrounded by these white panels were walls, with the air being sucked in and sterilized. He had become the equivalent of an enormous germ, and the monitors should have screamed the moment he came near. He arrived at another set of doors and was relieved when these slid open to allow him through. Perhaps he must be find his way out after all. These doors only led to another corridor, a little wider than the one he had just left, but equally unpromising. It occurred to him that he was still on the top floor. He had entered from the roof. He needed to find a lift or staircase that would take him down. Suddenly a door about 10 meters away opened, staring at Alex in disbelief. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing here?" he demanded. Alex registered that the man was talking in English. At the same time, he recognized him. The bald head, the hooked nose, thick black glasses, wearing a white laboratory coat, hanging loose over a jacket and a tie. But the last time I had seen him in the fancy dress, this was Dr. Lieberman. I guess he had seen talking to Mr. Rothman at the party in Venice. Alex wasn't sure what to say. "I'm lost." "You must literally. You can't come here. This is a secure area. Who are you?" "My name's Tom. My dad works here." "What's his name? What's his department?" Dr. Lieberman wasn't going to buy this little boy's lost routine. "How did you get here?" he asked. "My dad brought me. If you'd like to show me the way out, that's fine by me." "No, I'm calling security. You're coming with me." Dr. Lieberman took a step backwards towards the room where he'd come from. Next wasn't sure what to do. She tried to run once the alarm went off. It was only a matter of minutes before she was caught. Then what then? He assumed that Constanto had simply handed over to the police, but if they were hiding something here, if he had seen something secret, maybe he wouldn't be that fortunate. Dr. Lieberman was reaching out for something, and next there was an alarm button next to the door. "It's all right. I'll deal with this. A voice came from behind Alex. I spun around and found her heart sink. It was like a bad dream. Niall, the man who had knocked him unconscious and left him to drown, was standing behind him, a smile on his face, totally relaxed. He too was wearing a white coat. In his case, it hung over his jeans and a tight-fitting t-shirt. He had a grey attached case in one hand, but as Alex watched, he set it down to the floor behind him. "Wasn't expecting to see you again, Harold." Harold Lieberman was puzzled. "Miss Rothman sent me back." "Why?" "Well, as you can see, Dr. Lieberman, there's been a very serious breakdown in security. Before she left me, asked me to deal with it." "Do you know who this boy is?" "Who is he?" "His name is Alex Ryder." "Who said his name was Tom?" "He's lying. He's a spy." Alex was caught in the middle of this conversation. One man on the other side of him. He was trapped. He felt dazed, and he knew that there was nothing he could do. Niall was too fast and too strong for him. He already proved that. What are you going to do? After the library man demanded, he sounded peeved as if neither Alex nor Niall had any right to be there. I just told you, Howard, we can't have security problems. We're going to deal with it. Niall reached under his coat and produced one of the most lethal-looking weapons Alex had ever seen. It is a samurai sword, very lightly curving with an ivory hilt and a flat razor sharp blade, but it was half-sized, somewhere between a sword and a dagger. Niall held it for a moment in his hands, obviously enjoying the fine balance, then raised it to the height of his shoulder. Now he could throw it or slash with it. Either way, Alex knew instantly he was facing a master. Or perhaps he had a second to live. You can't kill him here, Dr. Lyman explained in explanation. You'll get blood everywhere. Don't worry, Harold, he would have replied. This is going to go into the neck and into the brain. There'll be very little blood. Alex crashed down, preparing to dodge, knowing that he would have a chance. Niall was still smiling, obviously enjoying himself. He drew his sword. There was a single movement. Alex hadn't even seen Niall take him, but the blade was already blurred, flashing down the lens of passing away. He passed over Alex's shoulder. Now, miss, that was impossible. He suddenly realized that Niall hadn't been aiming at him. Alex turned and saw Dr. Lieberman already dead, still standing, and a look of surprise on his face. He had managed to bring one hand up so that it was holding the blade of the sword, now sticking out of his neck. He pitched forward and lay motionless. Straight into the brain, Clive muttered, just like I said. As Alex watched the son, Niall walked past him and crashed down beside Dr. Lieberman. He pulled the sword free, using the dead man's tie to wipe it clean, and returned it to its sheath, which hung from its waist beneath his lab coat. He looked up. Hello, Alex. Stiffly. The last person I expected here. Miss Rothman would be pleased. You don't want to kill me? Miss Mammoth, you can believe what had just happened. Not at all. Not at all. Now stood up and went back to attach the case and opened it. Alex was finding it very difficult to keep up with what was happening. Inside the case, he saw a keyboard, a small computer screen, 2 square packets, and a series of wires. Now knelt down and tapped rapidly on the keyboard. A series of codes appeared on the screen, black and white, like the fingers that were typing them. He continued talking as he typed. I hope you'll forgive me, Alex. I have to say I'm very sorry for what happened at the Windows Palace. I didn't realize who you were. John Ryder's son. I think it's brilliant how you managed to escape, by the way. I never have forgiven myself. If I'd have to go in and fish you out with a boat hook. He finished typing, press enter, then closed the lid of the case. But you can't talk now. Miss Rothman is just along the coast in Poscianto. She's dying to meet you, so let's go. Why did you kill Dr. Lieberman? Because Miss Rothman ordered me to. I said, no, look, I'm sure you got a lot of questions, but I can't answer them right now. I just said a bomb. I just said a bomb to blow this place up to smithereens in. Watch 92 seconds, so I don't think we have time for chat. He saved the case near Dr. Lieberman's head, checked the dead man one last time, then walked away. Alex followed him. What else could he do? Now came to the set of doors and tapped in the code. The doors opened and they went through. They were moving quickly. Niall had the athlete's ability to cover a lot of ground with no apparent effort at all. Here was the staircase Alex had been looking for. They went down the 3 floors and came to another door. Now punched in a number, and suddenly they were in the open air. There was a car, a 2-seater Alfa Romeo Spider, waiting for outside with the roof down. Hop in, Niall said. From the way he was talking, Alex could see had just come from the cinema and be on their way home. Nice got in and they drove off. How much time had passed since Niall had set the bomb? It was now completely dark outside. The sun had finally disappeared. They followed a tarmac drive to the main checkpoint. Niall smiled at the guard. Crazy estato bello verde. Thank you. It's good to see you. That's what he knew from that first meeting that Niall spoke Italian. The guard nodded and raised the barrier. Niall gunned the accelerator and the car shot off smoothly. Alex twisted around in the seat. A few seconds later, there was an enormous explosion. It was as if a fist of orange flames had decided to punch its way Out of the main complex, windows shattered, smoke and fire rushed out. Thousands of pieces of glass and steel, a deadly rageful showered down. Alarms, shrill and deafening, erupted. A huge bite had been taken out of the side and the roof of the building. Alex had seen the size of the bomb. It was hard to believe that it could have caused so much damage. Now, glanced at the mirror, examining his handle, he tutted. These industrial accidents. Moment, you can never tell what is going to happen next. He steered the Alpha Spider along the coastal road, already doing 80 miles an hour. Behind him, Consunder Enterprises burned, the flames leaping up and reflecting in the dark and silent sea. Bye-bye everyone, and thank you for listening to this book.